The toString method. In this video, we will learn how to print objects using the toString method. Okay. Consider the following program. Here, we can create a rectangle with a length of 4 and a width of 6. Then in the following lines, we print out the instance variables one by one, separated by a comma and a space. When I execute this code, this will be my output. That all being said, while this code gets the job done, it is a rather tedious way of having to print out the rectangle's information. Okay. Rather than printing out each instance variable one by one, wouldn't it be nice if we could simply just write system.out.print rec, the name of the rectangle object? It would be. However, when we do that, this is the output we get. We get the name of the class, followed by an @ symbol, followed by some random number called a hash code. No information about the width or the length. Why is that? Well, to understand why this is happening, we first have to discuss how the print statement and the println statements work. When we invoke system.out.print, what that method does behind the scenes is invoke the toString method of the rectangle class, and that toString method returns a string representation of the rectangle class. Now, you might be wondering, how could my rectangle class have a toString method when I never gave it one? I never wrote code for it. Well, the answer to that is every Java class has a toString method by default. So even if you don't write a toString method in it yourself, when you write that class, Java will give it one by default. And what that method does is it returns a string representation of an object. Anytime you use system.out.print or system.out.println, behind the scenes, those methods are going to invoke the toString method of the object you're printing. The default definition is to return the name of the class, followed by the @ symbol, then a hash number. The problem with this is that this information is rarely useful to us. As programmers, we're usually more concerned with the instance variables. Not only that, we usually want to see our output formatted a certain way, so that it'll be easier for programmers to read and comprehend. Unfortunately, the default definition doesn't provide any of this for us. However, fortunately, Java gives us the ability to replace the default definition of toString with our own definition. This is an example of method overriding. So, how are we going to override the toString method? The first step is to make the method public. Then we must make the return type string. Then we must name the method toString, followed by an empty parameter list. Okay. When writing your toString method, the header for your toString method must match this header exactly. Otherwise, the compiler will not consider this a method override. So even if you keep the name the same, but you only change the return type, or you keep the name the same, but you add a parameter, that's not a method override. That's creating a new method with the same name. And the problem with that is system.out.print and system.out.println only invoke either the default toString method or an overridden version of it. It's not going to invoke a new method, even if it has the same name as toString. Now for the body of the method. Here's where we define how we want our class to be represented. I highlight return because we're going to want to return this representation. So how do we want it represented? Suppose all I want is to simply see the length value followed by a comma and a space followed by the width. Well, that's what I would have returned. I would say return this.length plus comma and a space plus this.width. Thus, in my main program, when I create a rectangle with a length of 9 and a width of 3, then I type system.out.print rec. That's the representation that I get on my console. Here's another way I could have done it. I could have said, hey, return the word length followed by a colon and a space, followed by the instance variable, followed by the new line character, which, if you recall, pushes the cursor down to the next line, followed by the word width and a colon and a space, followed by the instance variable width. If this is how I define toString, then in my main method, when I create a rectangle object with a length of 7 and a width of 10, when I call system.out.print rec, that's going to be the representation I get to the console. The word length colon followed by the length, and the word width colon followed by the actual width. The beauty of toString is that it gives us the ability to literally represent our classes however we want it to be represented.